I thought I would talk a bit about relationships today, and make a bit of a focus on abusive relationships that do not have the straightforward signs that other relationships do in the same manner, such as is like physical abuse and so on. And it comes to subtle verbal abuse that over time obviously increases, but at first it's not noticed. So as you guys know, I'm a mom. Um, at the moment, I have no relationship with anyone, and I come from a background of abuse and other things. And one of the things is the relationship with my son's father is not the best. He was never a person that showed me positive signs, but having the background and the situations I dealt with at the time, I sort of perhaps wasn't as aware of all the things that I did that hinder my ability to be able to be more selective and make better choices for myself rather than jump into the arms of other form of abuse from where I was running away from. So when I got with him, it wasn't because of money, favors, or anything. It was just my mental state at the time. I thought I would give someone a chance. I never was head over heels with him. It was just I thought I failed to give him a chance, and he liked me a lot, and sort of had this portrait of this kind of man he was. And with that is I was misguided into sort of painting this image of a person, while at the same time telling myself that I should love or give this person a chance, even though I didn't meet all the things that even at the time that I wasn't as picky or as thoughtful of who to share my time in my life with. I still kind of devalue myself and undersold myself and undermatch myself, and that little bits of nothing made them bigger deal than they were. So with that is I got in a relationship with someone who liked me, who was absent, who made plans with me from the very beginning and stood me up and made excuses, and I allowed those excuses. And long before my son came, I built this kind of relationship. And the thing is that it came so subtle because it comes in between the kindness, sweetness, and why am I talking about this topic is because I see through the trends a lot that he texts you every morning and things like that. It's like, where is the quality of, for one, you guys know my whole focus through most of my philosophies has been about working on ourselves. But I understand that people want to pair up, and just because I choose not to, because I haven't met that person in my life, it doesn't mean that others don't want to. And so it doesn't mean that I don't have knowledge to partake into relationships, keeping in mind where I've been, especially since I've walked myself out of not the best choices. And so by sharing sort of my mind and my perspective at the time that I jump into these relationships, and what signs now I am able to see of myself in the relationships and the whole situations at the time, now that I look back, are sort of telltales that you can tell when you are beginning to take steps into not necessarily the best direction for yourself. So with that, bringing it back is you start to enable situations, you start to take very little things and make them a bigger deal, because there's sort of this positive, it's like, I don't want to be a quitter, I don't want to be a person who doesn't understand that there is ups and downs. And I think that's where people need to start making better understanding of what is an up, what is a down, and what is what is that you need to see as a red flag, and what is a moment, a situation that you can work on over time. So I think that's where we all start to make the mistakes early in our lives. And I think that since there's so much lack of proper interaction and talk over relationships are, because people are afraid to be alone, and divorce is looked down upon, that people don't understand that not talking about these things means that those mistakes and that lack of knowledge and understanding is not passed on to younger generations. So the mistakes are repeated over and over. And so you don't want divorce. It's best to teach then the younger generation better about themselves, better about actual partnerships. So then they are able to unify with people that match more their persona. And the talk of divorce in that is no part of the topic, simply for the fact that people are no longer just unifying out of desperation, out of need, out of demand, out of fear, loneliness, but people are working better on themselves. You have a society of people who are happier with themselves, and therefore they're able to be happier with others. And so that's where all of the talk about positives and negatives of relationships is important. And what it might seem like I'm just here trying to diss people, at the end of the day, you guys have known that these are things that I've been dealing with for years, even on the not related to this topic, but related in the sense of being open. The problems with the whole Elon Musk and Grimes thing, etc. It's things that I've been dealing with those things for years, and me bringing it out is because they don't go away. Not talking about it, ignoring it, removing it, etc. So me talking about it is exposing to the world these things for better perspective, to heal, to be able to address, to be able to get some sort of justice, to be able to actually bring attention to people, situations, patterns, etc., that are affecting our world. Because everything that affects us, our minds, our hearts, is also what affects our societies, what shapes our society. From the environmental things all the way to things like sex trafficking, to abuse of power and leadership, to our financial situation, to our knowledge, to the future of our planet, war, etc., etc. All of it is interconnected with the person we are, and relationships are just that too. And these things of alphabet games, of numerology, misuse of knowledge, of understanding of all things, of abusing people's faith, abusing technology so you can watch people, read people, and then start to sort of toxically manage them, insert all these delusions and distractions and these distortions of their faith, etc., of their personal lives, of others, so they don't listen to positive message. All this distortion that is happening, it's at multiple levels, and until we start to address the inner house, talk about our past more openly, to learn from it rather than to repeat it or just to be angry about it, but to understand it. Because in the past, you can see better where you make mistakes, where others sort of showed the signs that perhaps are not obvious when you're at that moment. But then once you're able to learn from the past, from the mistakes and the positive and everything, when you bring it applied to the present, then you're able to sort of process something better, a better version of yourself. You're able to see hinders, problems, red flags, solutions, and so much more than just fear, than just desperation, than just anger, than just trying to push things forcefully, etc. You see a much bigger, better picture. And with that, then you're able to build a better future, not just for yourself, but for others. And that is sort of the legacy you leave for future generations. So when I come and talk about my relationships and the situations I'm dealing with, that is sort of what I'm trying to do. From something that was monstrous, destructive, not only heal myself as I have on my own, while still trying to deal with many hardships and the constant toxic and push from those who don't like a person like myself, who's open, who gives perspective, rather than just leaving that this happened to me, feel sorry or sad or broken, or feel angry and upset, or notice this, but think bigger and see a solution, see the other side. That is obviously not a message that people who are destructive and toxic want to see out there, want others to listen or observe. Someone who makes all these connections of how that relates to your relationships, to your past, present, future, that hinders their activity. And so obviously a person like myself has been targeted for many years, and through the years they're going to escalate in different manners, because if the beginning doesn't work, they obviously have to try something else. So with that's why I bring sort of perspective from different angles, different moments in my life. But also I like to start talking more about the topics of sex, relationships, being bridging more, the topics of relationship, of society, etc. Because this is all what makes us right now, and the situation that is in the world, it's beyond COVID. For those who don't know, earthquakes, tsunamis, storms, severe floods, landfalls because of floods. There's a fire, obviously, as we know, with extreme heat, etc., etc. So we have that. You have unemployment because also COVID is not just COVID, it's the chain reaction it had in our society, how that affected people like ourselves, small businesses, and not the top wealthiest people. The top wealthiest people made more money than ever, got more power, and got more freedom, and got more access to all the market that basically all the smaller businesses that are failing have left for them, and then add to that the protest, and then the abuse of protest by those who want to cement chaos by acting as protesters and going and destroying what they didn't go and destroy. And I'm not inviting anyone to do anything of that, because that's not a solution. That is resources that we're losing for ourselves. For example, they didn't go and destroy some rich company, oligarchy, monopoly. They went for the small businesses, for the small people, businesses that makes all of us. So obviously, if anyone who's quote unquote protesting because they feel misrepresented is hurting the same people who's with them, they're not very smart, or maybe we should think bigger. And there has a sort of a hidden agenda by those who want to sort of start to silence the voices that speak, like myself. Protesting is a matter of that. It's when you bring it, when all of us gather, bigger numbers of people, of course, scare them. And by cementing this sort of perspective, then you just start justification of bringing armies, etc., as you are seeing in the United States, as you have seen in other places across the planet. And that's where you have to make the difference. That's why knowledge and understanding of a system, and bringing here are the problems and here are the solutions, and voicing that and creating the sort of your program, your agenda, your voice of whatever method you're using, making a video, making documentaries, protesting, with that sort of order. Because that's what you're supposed to be. You're not supposed to bring just chaos and stir a pot and leave it in that. Then they get to bring this military force, and that's why we have this back and forth, and this is all there is, this war, and then the freedoms are taken more, and so on, because there's this justification of, organized militia, anarchy, and destruction, and fear, and who's getting hurt, and so on. And it is proper to call to that, because there is no solution in this. If we, instead of becoming destructive, we start to see a solutions in that, you only go to force when you need to. You take your steps, and you take them properly. Because when you get to that moment when you're going to need to be responsive, it's not going to be you just throwing punches at first without any end target. The whole idea even of using force is to bring something that is completely destructive with no purpose of stopping or getting anywhere down, to stop it, not to constantly be in the war of punches back and forth. That is not a solution. So this all goes back to relationships, because that's how we also deal with relationships. Why they're still talking about that one with my son is because I forced myself to be in it, and then once I was in it, I was angry at this person for not doing what I wanted, which is love me, treat me well. And I did everything, and I was upset, and I didn't understand that it doesn't matter how perfect I could be to this person. They don't respect me. They don't see that, because they have seen all these years I let them abuse me, right? And what were the best solutions? The minutes that I started to have my conversations and talk, and not teamworking, they're walking away from it, but actually being more serious about it. How does that connect with protests and all the things that I went to? Because it's the same manner. In these protests, what I see is a lot of people are frustrated, and I feel that in the relationship conversations that I see trending, that's what I see. People are fearful, people are lonely, people are frustrated, people are sort of cornering themselves it's also how they feel about themselves, and that's why a little bit of woohoo, bravo online or by other person that they might look up to for whatever reason, then makes them feel like they're more than whatever. And people who know that will abuse that only to toy with people's emotions, and they don't just do it directly by people who you know, but people online, people, companies, corporations, all of these things affect our feelings and emotions. Corporations knowing more about your personal life, going into your house, means that they have a way to toy with your emotions and your feelings to get you to spend more money than you should, to get you to spend your money somewhere instead of somewhere else that benefits you better. Because how do they become billionaires, trillionaires, and whatever, quadrillionaires and quintillionaires? Because remember, they'll never have enough. It's by taking everything from you. And even by having it, they'll never have enough because they have their own disease. But the only way we can address this disease as a society is by seeing it with ourselves, seeing our relationships. So to wrap all these big conversation on how it started from, back in my relationship to how I see relationships trending, how it connects to all of this, it goes to back to see yourself and face yourself for the facts. What kind of person have you been? Both from the positive and the negative, and how you enable. I don't care how nice someone sounds. It's look at how that affects you as a person. You don't have to believe anything someone says. Look at the facts. That's why I could talk to you about Grimes and Elon Musk all you want. But that's why I bring you guys the receipts. I post the articles and use their own posts, put them side by side, giving you that as an example. I could talk here hell about my ex. It doesn't matter. You guys can look at the facts. I'm on my own. I take care of my kid and that. And to me, that's what matters. If I talk about it openly, it's to bring attention sort of to a moment that I learned, how that applies at this moment in our societies, because I see a society that's sort of full of need. There is the need of addressing the problems, but there is also a need to satisfy an emptiness inside, because there's like this tiredness, and I get it. As a person who's been from battle to battle to battle to battle, you do start to feel empty, and it starts to change you a little too fast, where it can sort of crash you emotionally, mentally, and also how you feel about others and when you think about others. But at no point should it become an excuse to see yourself for what you actually are, in both positive and negative, and how you enable those things. So whether you're a toxic person or where you're enabling, that's where you have to see yourself, and where you are, how you're going to address those things. In that relationship that I mentioned with my son's father, I had to walk away. I had to force myself, type myself, show myself the facts in a way I couldn't deny. I cried to myself, and when I did, it was still difficult because he made it difficult. And there was police involved, and even afterwards he's called the police to me unnecessarily. There has been injustices. He has been physically abusive, severely verbally abusive, mentally abusive, does not pay child support, all that stuff. And it's for me to manage these things, this toxic person from my past that's constantly trying to sneak into my life, and force attachment to, trying to control my life, then having to deal with my son. Imagine that now, how it was when I was in a relationship with this person. The thing because I was in love with him at the time, like I loved him. I had convinced myself enough to love a toxic person, that convincing myself to see the facts for what they were, to step out, was also problematic. And the only person that was able to do that was myself. All the facts in front of me weren't enough until I myself looked in the mirror and I had to be honest. This is what it is. Is this what you want? Because this is all there is going to be. You can lie to people all you want, but this is your life. And if this is what you're okay with, then that's it. If this is not what you want, you have to understand there's only one way. And it's to address things the way they are. And to me, it was to leave, and as I say, all the things that happened. And even through the time at the beginning, he kept trying to force his way in, and so on. And it took me a lot of time, courage and strength, and anger and shaking, and feeling like I'm losing my mind, to be able to step out of that. But walking myself through that hill to the present, where I feel more empowered, where I can talk to you guys about it like that, um, you know, I wouldn't change it for the world. Well, it's no ideal because I put myself in this relationship. I pushed myself to stay in this relationship while I was in it, and I had to push myself out of it. So with all of this big lesson of how that relates to everything, it's just in the same manner how we apply it. But if you see, I wasn't punching and kicking and fighting violently. That didn't lead me anywhere. I had to be smart and intelligent and accept my facts for what they were and take every step the way I had to do it, and I managed to. I didn't have to be violent about it. I just had to be objective and honest with myself and apply myself. So in that same fashion, apply yourself in all your relationships. Your relationship with yourself, your relationship with your career, with your education, with your family members, with your vision of life, with your job, with your career, with your friends, with society, with your leaders, etc., etc. You know, it's not just throw yourself violent and fight and that and keep it at that back and forth constantly, but see yourself and evolve, you know. And just like you wouldn't stay in a relationship, or at least as a person who's known stuck in a relationship or a route, you wouldn't stay somewhere where you're being abused. It's in the same manner you will apply yourself to everything from your job to who you're allowed to be your leader, you know, to how you're addressing those things, to how you treat yourself, etc., etc. So all the lesson I want to leave from everything I talk here is that remember that to be able to work yourself out of things, you have to address yourself directly because you are that person. You are your answer.